The birth of Princess Beatrice of York took place on August 8, 1988, and she was welcomed into the world by the most famous royal family in the world and through hashtag 39. For someone who was born into such a position of extreme privilege, it would come as a complete surprise to learn that she had so many problems. And by the time this movie is over, you and hashtag 39 will have a better understanding of why money can and hashtag 39 to solve all of your problems. As a result of the fact that she was the firstborn daughter of Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, she became the sixth most treasured granddaughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. Everyone believed that she would have the most silver spoons of any child in history when she was born. This was the assumption that everyone made. Due to the peculiar nature of the circumstances surrounding the case of Princess Beatrice and hashtag 39, they were forced to withdraw their former remarks. When she was just 7 years old, she went through the experience of witnessing that life has a way of tossing curveballs at you, regardless of where you were born. This was the beginning of her vibrant existence. However, after the scandals and incompetence of her mother and hashtag 39 were brought to the attention of the world, when Beatrice and hashtag 39's parents went through a famous divorce, her entire world came crashing down around her. Co-parenting and maintaining a healthy relationship were two of the ways in which they attempted to provide for their family. However, it is not an easy task to mend the broken heart of a child, and hashtag 39's broken heart. Both she and her younger sister, Princess Eugenie, were able to mature into beautiful and respectable ladies, thanks to the nurturing relationships that they shared with their family. On the other hand, they had the impression that something else was taking place on a more profound level. Did these items make their lives more difficult, or did they make their lives easier? We are going to unveil the most shocking secrets of the royal family right up until the very end of the video, and you are not going to trust your eyes when you see something like that. Because Beatrice was unable to lead a regular life following her parents' and hashtag 39's divorce, we keep referring to her life as difficult. She was never going to fit in with the other kids, no matter how much she tried. The revelation that their young princess had dyslexia startled the royal family when she was transferred to the hospital. She did her best to disguise it for a time. In 2005, however, she stepped forward to publicly announce her illness, and in doing so, she offered support to anyone who was experiencing the same difficulty. Prior to making the announcement, she had a difficult time coming to terms with the fact. Her academic career was severely adversely affected as a result of this. Beatrice believed that if she waited a year before sitting her GCSE exams, she would be able to better regulate her dyslexia and possibly earn higher scores. What do you think, huh? Wow, she went above and above expectations. By achieving a grade of A in drama and a Bachelor of Science degree, she displayed her dedication to honoring and performing the responsibilities that were entrusted to her as a member of the royal family at the level when it comes to history and film studies. The fact that she was chosen as the head girl during her senior year is evidence of the strong leadership characteristics she exhibited. She received an excellent education, and the school chorus was where she discovered her aptitude for singing. It was also in the school choir that she acquired a strong interest in artistic endeavors. We are here to tell you that the stigma that she had to endure throughout her childhood had nothing to do with the fact that she had dyslexia. If you were curious about what it was, you may ask. Within a short time, we will let you know about that. Having to come to terms with the fact that she was her mother's daughter was the moment that everything started to happen. Her mother, Sarah Ferguson, had gone on to do a great deal of other things in her life. In spite of the fact that she was Lady Diana and 39's closest friend, she was involved in a number of scandals, and most recently, allegedly murdered Sarah Mitchell led to this woman becoming her mother. Her area of influence encompassed anything from her affair, which resulted in a Christmas photo of her assistant licking her toes being viral, to her incompetence in management of basic money, which resulted in her house being in debt. Prior to the development of the internet, her fame had already begun to spread. Her effort to bribe a reporter by using the authority of the British royal family was probably the most contentious issue that arose from this situation. She was reviled by the general populace as much as the media. It was because of this that she became known as the Duchess of Pork, due to the fact that Princess Beatrice thought herself to be the Duchess of Pork and the hashtag 39s. This was a word that was extremely painful for her. When she was just 8 years old, she began a rigorous diet regimen for herself as a result of this experience. Beatrice's relationship with her body image became more complicated as she grew older, which made the problem much more difficult to manage. As she neared maturity, the public and hashtag 39 began to take an increased interest in her appearance, and the masses began to critique every fashion choice and haircut that she made. This just served to make the situation even more dire. The frosting on the cake was the ridicule she had to undergo in 2011. Instead of being commended for her exquisite sense in fashion, she was referred to as the end quotation pretzel hat, end quote, and other such names. Nope, because of her daring fascinator that she wore to the wedding of Prince William and hashtag 39. Because she was someone who was highly self-conscious about her appearance, the idea of being the target of public ridicule was exceedingly terrifying to her. There is a reasonable assumption that she got more reserved and eventually gave up. Certainly not at all. She paid no attention to anyone or anything else and concentrated on bettering herself instead. The beauty standards of society were not something that she was willing to give up. They made the decision to be themselves instead. Given her level of celebrity, the conventional notions of beauty have been called into question by her, and she has encouraged her audience to do the same. Her sister, Princess Eugenie, shared with us a moment when she was filled with emotion shortly before making a public appearance. Beatrice fought over adversity and ensured that she would stay the most cherished member of the royal family. Princess Eugenie revealed this moment to us. Beatrice's love and concern for other people is the reason why she is so well liked by a large number of people. Among the members of her royal family, she was the only one who was compared to Princess Diana, who was her aunt. Specifically, this occurred as a result of Beatrice maturing into a queen who comprehended her subjects and accepted her regal responsibilities. She felt the same way as the other members did, that she was a golden bird that was confined within the royal cage. The celebration of her 18th birthday was a great masked extravaganza held at Windsor Castle, and she did not waste any time in maturing. Before she started working, she made certain that she would proceed in the appropriate manner. It was at Selfridges, where she worked her way up the retail ladder, that everything started to happen. Following that, she worked as an unpaid intern at the press office of the Foreign Office and the hashtag 39 organization. The purpose of her undergoing all of this instruction was to improve her understanding of her subjects and to enable her to fulfill her royal duties accordingly. It was clear that she intended to change the traditions of the royal family and hashtag 39 when she made her statement. In 2009, Beatrice made history by becoming the first member of the British royal family to star in a feature film rather than a documentary. She did this by playing a supporting role in The Young Victoria, which gave her the opportunity to break new ground. One of the most well-liked movies ever made featured her ancestor, Queen Victoria. However, as a result of a hacking scandal that took place in 2014, she was compelled to leave her internship at Sony Pictures, and the picture that she originally intended to be her debut ended up being her farewell picture as well. It was not till hashtag 39 that she experienced a total and utter halt in her life when her acting career came to a stop. Keep in mind that she is not your typical Joe and that she has the ISN and hashtag 39. Beatrice, the cherished princess, is embodied by her being. In 2015, she relocated to New York City, which allowed her to advance to the next level of her job. She soon found herself in a position where she had to balance her responsibilities in both New York and London as part of her full-time employment. She was known by her professional name, Beatrice York, and she served as Vice President of Partnerships and Strategy at Affinity Business. In case you were wondering, Partnership and Strategy is currently the most dominant artificial intelligence corporation in the world. On the other hand, you might be wondering what exactly she did to give assistance to the people who were important to her. Don't worry, we will get back to you as soon as possible with the specifics. Are you still considering the fact that she has dyslexia? Her time spent in school when she was younger was spoiled as a result of this particular issue. In spite of the fact that she went to a school that was very good at teaching mundane subjects, she was utterly alone and had no one to rely on but herself. Her loved ones were quick to respond when they found out about her sickness, and she quickly started to reclaim her life after they received the news. It was because of the consistent support she received from her teachers and friends that she was able to triumph over her impediment and demonstrate that an individual's physical limitations should not prevent them from achieving their goals. She was able to acquire the ability to think creatively and come up with original answers to long-standing issues as a consequence of all of this. A movement for understanding and education was driven by Beatrice and hashtag 39, which was inspired by her own personal experience. It is because of her willingness to discuss her challenges with dyslexia in interviews and public speeches that she has been able to contribute to the reduction of the stigma associated with the condition. In her address, she made it very obvious that dyslexia is not a sign of weakness, but rather a chance for growth in areas such as imaginative problem solving, critical thinking, and innovative approach to tackling problems. Through her work with organizations such as the Helen R. Kell Dyslexia Charity, she has demonstrated her commitment to assisting students from disadvantaged backgrounds, even in her personal life. When she and hashtag 39 are at home with their children, she tries everything in her power to inspire them to accept themselves as they are and to develop to their greatest intellectual and emotional potential. She is assuring that they will develop into self-sufficient individuals who are able to fulfill their full potential as opposed to allowing them to live their lives as birds that are imprisoned. Moreover, the diverse nature of her childhood was another feature that contributed to the formation of her personality. Despite the fact that it had an odd impact on her, she found herself embroiled in a high-profile divorce fight involving her parents and the controversial hashtag 39. She was able to conceal the internal cracks that had evolved as a result of the nurturing impacts that were brought about by two different parenting approaches. It was via spending time with her mother that she was able to adopt her mother's laid-back nature, and while attending formal events with her father, she was able to learn the necessary protocol for royals. Despite the fact that she was only a youngster with dyslexia, she was able to achieve success in ways that nobody had predicted, and the entire time while simultaneously balancing the demands of her parents, who lived in different worlds. People might have an unfavorable reaction to this. Despite the fact that she was obligated to uphold the dignity of royalty, Beatrice frequently desired for a life that was less extraordinary, as the royal author Tom Quinn pointed out. Sisters. They were completely unaware of the fact that Beatrice would find such a paradoxical source of strength in her family and in the hashtag 39 as she adjusted to her new existence. It was difficult to take in all of that political bluster. We need to talk about a subject that is more interesting now. Assuming that a lady of the princes and the hashtag 39 stature would have been aware of which men would be most suitable for her, Wooden and the hashtag 39, what are your thoughts on this? The utterly mind-blowing decision that this girl and hashtag 39 made was the worst one that has ever been made, so hang on to your chairs, please. She had her first romantic interest when she was 17 years old, and it was the worst guy in the world. What? She had romantic feelings for Paolo Liuzzo, who was 24 years old at the time, and he was the object of her desires. As a result of the numerous legal problems that they had, Paolo was considered to be a very notorious figure. From the moment they started dating in public, the public went absolutely wild. They are prepared to give up their lives in order to ensure that Paulo and Princess Beatrice are able to be romantically involved. In what way did he come to be regarded with such contempt by the majority of people? He was a student at the time, and he was involved in a brawl that ended in death. As a result, charges of manslaughter were initially brought against the defendant, but they were later reduced to counts of assault and violence. Let us not forget that he was the worst, and that we have described everything to the greatest extent feasible. Even more astounding is the fact that Beatrice and 39's family, particularly Sarah Ferguson, her mother, gave their blessing to the relationship despite the scandal that he was involved in. The problems that Liuzzo and 39 faced as a result of his probation and the restrictions that were placed on his freedom of movement forced them to end their affair in 2006. Fortunately, this occurred in 2006. Despite the fact that they had finally broken up, Beatrice was seen as being in a state of mourning and depression for a considerable amount of time. It is not this brief affair that had a significant impact on her life. Rather, it was her decade-long romance with Dave Clark, a businessman who worked for Virgin Galactic, that had a profound and irreversible impact on her life. Everyone was under the impression that Clark would finish off her exquisite fairy tale romance by playing the role of the Prince Charming, as eventually they arrived at the realization that they had high aspirations for an eternal royal marriage. But in 2016, Beatrice endured yet another heartbreaking loss when she declined to commit to a marriage. A single point, however. This girl was Clark's unwavering ally, and she went to such lengths as to make the decision to move to New York City only for the sake of being with him. But as time went on, their relationship began to show symptoms of strain, and she was left with a choice that was not easy to make. After Clark swiftly moved on and engaged to someone else, Beatrice felt terrible about herself and her incapacity to be loved. This made the loss of the relationship even more painful for her relationship with Clark. What followed that, and what happened? Who else did she go on to meet? Is she in a better position now? As the video draws to a close, the answers to all of your queries will be provided to you and hashtag 39. Immediately after experiencing a devastating loss, she made a beeline for her people. She made a deliberate choice to turn her pain into strength, and she carried out her royal responsibilities with an amazing amount of zeal. She started working in the field of humanitarianism and campaigning for causes that she believed in order to better raise awareness about such concerns. As she began to recover from the emotional wounds that her past had caused, her spirit was fortified by the fact that she placed a strong emphasis on helping other people, which brought her a sense of peace. She once again demonstrated that the traumas that you carry within you are what genuinely distinguish you from other people. Your fire will only be stoked by their presence. Surprisingly close to becoming magical, To her good fortune, she happened to meet Edoardo Mappelli Mozzi at just the point when she was beginning to think that love might not be her destiny. He was a real estate mogul who had connections to the Italian aristocracy, and he became an essential component of her life. He caused her to regret the lonely nights that she cursed love on. In 2018, they began dating, and shortly after that, their relationship went viral. Beatrice became a media darling after she attended a public event with Edoardo in March of 2019. This was because it communicated to the world that the two of them were more serious about their relationship. Later that year, while on a romantic holiday in Italy, they announced their engagement to one another, giving the impression that they were deeply in love with one another. Someone who valued her for who she was and treated her with dignity and respect was all that she had ever required. In every one of these ways, Edoardo was a successful individual. There was a slight setback that occurred in May of 2020, when the COVID-19 epidemic appeared without prior warning, the month that was planned for the wedding to take place between them. Beatrice shown bravery by opting for a private wedding at Windsor in #39's Royal Saints in July of 2020, despite the fact that she had experienced this setback. This wedding was much more impersonal than the one that Lady Sarah and #39 had, which was already quite impersonal. Due to the fact that she was simultaneously dealing with another situation in her life at the time, they decided to have a small wedding. During that time period, her father, Prince Andrew, was a figure that was frequently criticized. Regardless, it was a behavior that was not befitting of a member of the royal family. The bride wore a renovated gown that the Queen had loaned her for her wedding, which was one among the numerous personal touches that helped to make the event appear to be no different from any other family gathering. As an additional embellishment, she decked herself with the Queen Mary, which is a symbol of continuation.